but I think this would be kind of fantastic. Here you go. Let's end with some real governing. By the way, a lot bigger than Marco Rubio's set. That's weird. And I know, granted, this is all CG because Biden's not allowed in the real White House. This is obviously an Amazon fulfillment center.
Good afternoon, everyone. Earlier this week, I spoke with President Putin of Russia about the nature of our relationship, the relationship between our two countries. And I was candid, respectful. The conversation was candid and respectful. Two great powers with significant responsibility for global stability. And President Putin and I have had a significant responsibility to steward that relationship. I take that responsibility very seriously, as I'm sure he does. Russia and Americans are both proud and patriotic people. And I believe the Russian people, like the American people, are invested in a peaceful and a secure future of our world. During the campaign for the presidency, I was unequivocal that if I was elected president, I would respond to any attempt to influence our elections, the last election, and because elections are sacred. They're sovereign undertakings, and they're an expression of the will of the American people. And we cannot allow a foreign power to interfere in our democratic process with impunity. And I told them if it turned out that as I thought, that there was engagement in our elections, that I'd respond. Later, during the transition, as we learned more about the SolarWinds cyber intrusion,
and how much of a scumbag Paul Manafort is,
I made clear that I would respond once we determined who had, in fact, conducted a hack on the scope and scale that occurred. When President Putin called me in January after I was sworn in to congratulate me, I told him that my administration would be looking very carefully, now that we had access to all the data, and at the issues to assess Russia's role, and then determine what response we would make. When we spoke again this week, I told him that we would shortly be responding in a measured and a proportionate way because we had concluded that they had interfered in the election and SolarWinds was totally inappropriate. Today, I've approved several steps, including expulsion of several Russian officials as a
By the way, as of today, they told them, I think last night, you gotta fuck off by tonight.
Consequence of their actions. I've also signed an executive order authorizing new measures, including sanctions to address specific harmful actions that Russia has taken against U.S. interests. I was clear with President Putin that we could have gone further, but I chose not to do so. I chose to be proportionate. The United States is not looking to kick off a cycle of escalation and conflict with Russia. We want a stable, predictable relationship. If Russia continues to interfere with our democracy, I'm prepared to take further actions to respond. It is my responsibility as President of the United States to do so. But throughout our long history of competition, our two countries have been able to find ways to manage tensions and to keep them from escalating out of control. There are also areas where Russia and the United States can and should work together. For example, in the earliest days of my administration, we were able to move quickly to extend for 5 years the New START Treaty and maintain that key element of nuclear stability between our nations. And that was in the interest of the United States, of Russia, and quite frankly, of the world. And we got it done. When I spoke to President Putin, I expressed my belief that communication between the two of us personally and directly was to be essential in moving forward to a more effective relationship, and he agreed on that point. To that end, I propose that we meet in person this summer in Europe for a summit to address a range of issues facing both of our countries. Our teams are...
And I suggest that you bring along Alexei Navalny, and we'll bring like 9 army medics.
Discussing that possibility right now. And out of that summit, were it to occur, and I believe it will, the United States and Russia could launch a strategic stability dialogue to pursue cooperation in arms control and security. We can address critical global challenges that require Russia and the United States to work together, including reining in nuclear threats from Iran and North Korea, ending this pandemic globally, and meeting the existential crisis of climate change. I also made clear to President Putin that the United States is unwavering in our support of our allies and partners in Europe. In that vein, I expressed concern about Russia's military buildup on Ukraine's border and in occupied Crimea. I affirmed U.S. support for the...
By the way, calling it occupied Crimea is no small thing. It's not just Crimea, it's occupied Crimea. Crimea is its own, it's part of Ukraine, it's part of their territory, and Russia is effectively trying to take it back. By calling it occupied Crimea, that's establishing that in terms of the United States, Crimea is illegally taken and still belongs to Ukraine. Trump would never say shit like that.
For the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. And I strongly urge him to refrain from any military action. Now is the time to de-escalate. The way forward is through thoughtful dialogue and diplomatic process. The U.S. is prepared to continue constructively to move toward that process. My bottom line is this: where there's an interest in the United States to work with Russia, we should and we will. Where Russia seeks to violate the interests of the United States, we will respond. We'll always stand in defense of our country, our institutions, our people, and our allies. Thank you very much for your time.
Did President Putin give you any indication in that call that he is willing to change his behavior?
We indicated we would talk about it. I laid out, as I said, very simply. I said during the campaign, I said when he called to congratulate me on being elected, I said subsequent to that, this last conversation, that if it turned out that he was engaged in activities that he'd been accused of in cybersecurity and solar winds and interfering in our elections, that I would respond in kind. I urged him to respond appropriately, not to exceed it, because we can move as well. My hope and expectation is we'll be able to work out a modus vivendi, but it's important that we have direct talks and that we continue to be in contact with one another. Thank you. Pardon me?
Why not Nord Stream? Why didn't you keep going with the sanctions on Nord Stream 2, Mr. President?
Nord Stream 2 is a complicated issue affecting our allies in Europe. I've been opposed to Nord Stream 2 for a long time, from the beginning when I was out of office and even before office, before I left office as vice president. But that still is an issue that is in play. Thank you very much.
We haven't answered that part of it yet. So, by the way, just like, we're gonna meet you on the field. If you did this, we busted you. By the way, they kicked a bunch of diplomats out. Let's see if I can find a Biden Biden sanctions. List so I can put it up on the screen for you. Let's see. So this is So this is the paper that they put out in relation to it from the White House. Fact sheet: imposing costs. Interesting way of phrasing it. For harmful foreign activities by the Russian government. Biden administration made clear the United States desires a relationship with Russia that is stable and predictable. He mentioned that in his thing. Okay. Executive order targeting the harmful foreign activities of the Russian government. Today, he signed a new sanctions executive order that provides strengthened authorities to demonstrate the administration's resolve in responding to and deterring the full scope of Russia's harmful foreign activities. This EO sends a signal that the United States will impose costs in a strategic, and economically impactful manner on Russia if it continues or escalates in its its destabilizing international actions. So here's the ones that they put it. They carry out the following actions pursuant to the EO. Treasury issued a directive that prohibits U.S. financial institutions from participation in the primary market for ruble or non-ruble denominated bonds issued after June 14th, 2021. Like, just the complexity by the way, by the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, the National Wealth Fund of the Russian Federation, or the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation, and lending ruble or non-ruble denominated funds to the Central Bank of the Russian Federation. Like, we're not doing business with the ruble after yesterday. Treasury, for the time being, and while these sanctions are in place, Treasury designated 6 Russian technology companies that provide support to the Russian intelligence services cyber program, ranging from providing expertise to developing tools and infrastructure to facilitating malicious cyber activities. These companies are being designated for operating in the technology sector of the Russian Federation economy. We will continue to hold Russia accountable for its malicious cyber activities, such as the SolarWinds incident, by using all available policies and authorities. Do you have any idea what that statement, that part of the statement, using all available policy and authorities, has post 9/11 as far as cyber attacks? I mean, generally attacks in the United States, the reins have been off for 20 years anyways. But post 9/11, that little thing, by using all available, not, everything's on the table. This isn't everything's on the table. This is using all available policy and authorities. The amount of authority that the president has under his executive order to deal with this shit is enormous. Okay. Imposing additional sanction. Treasury sanction. Let's shrink this down. I didn't realize it was smaller in the thing. I'm going to move it over. There you go. Sanctioned 32 entities and individuals carrying out Russian government-directed attempts to influence the 2020 U.S. presidential election and other acts of disinformation and interference. This action seeks to disrupt the coordinated efforts of Russian officials, proxies, and intelligence agencies to delegitimize our electoral process. So this isn't just, by the way, if they tried to attack the machines. It's much broader. This includes the social media attacks and all that kind of stuff. U.S. government will continue to pursue those who engage in such activity. Not continue to sanction. Pursue those. I mean, you got to understand the language in this shit. This is based on an executive order. These are actionable, legally defined, position points that have more meaning than just, we're going to go after them. They're going to bring them to justice. Those kind of phrases, they mean something when you put them in an executive order. Treasury in partnership with, and by the way, Treasury in partnership with the European Union, the UK, Australia, and Canada, sanctioned 8 individuals and entities associated with Russia's ongoing occupation and repression in Crimea. So they've reached out to the NATO alliance and said, and to the Quad, and said, we need to stop what they're doing, the occupation and repression in Crimea. And they brought them on board before this EO was signed. This was not, ready, fire, aim. The transatlantic community stands united in supporting Ukraine against unilateral Russian provocations along the line of contact in eastern Ukraine. In occupied Crimea, again, the use of that phrase is very meaningful. Instead of just saying Crimea, calling it occupied Crimea, and the fact that they're pulling in these other people means it's legally significant that they call it that. And along Ukraine's borders, as well as agreeing on the need for Russia to immediately cease its military buildup and inflammatory rhetoric. Reported Afghanistan bounties. The administration. Oh, remember this? Remember this? The administration is responding to reports that Russia encouraged Taliban attacks against the U.S. and coalition personnel in Afghanistan based on the best assessments from the intelligence community. Look at this. Based on the best assessments from the intelligence community. You mean taking our own intelligence community seriously again? Given the sensitivity of this matter, which involves the safety and well-being of our forces, it is being handled through diplomatic, military, and intelligence channels. This is a gloves-off approach. The safety and well-being of U.S. military personnel and that of our allies and partners is an absolute priority of the United States. What was the America First shit when? Where was America First when Biden? When Trump was actually saying, well, I don't know that they did. It's probably not something they did. And aren't we killers too? Expelling diplomatic personnel. The United States is expelling 10 personnel from the Russian diplomatic mission in Washington, D.C. The personnel include representatives of Russian intelligence services. So you leave the country and you can't come back. So if you want somebody else to be here, you got to go through the whole process of bringing somebody in, and then we get to vet them whether they can come into the country again. So if you're going to replace these intelligence people with people that we've sanctioned, it's going to take you a while. Further responses to the SolarWinds malicious cyber activity. Today, the United States is formally naming the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, also known as Apartment 29, Cozy Bear, and the Dukes. Just some good old boys, never meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw, been in trouble with the law since the day they was born. Now I'm going to get to straightening the curves, flattening the hills, fighting the system like a two modern day. All right. The broad-scope cyber espionage campaign that exploited the SolarWinds Orion platform and other information technology infrastructure, the U.S. intelligence community has high confidence in its assessment of attribution to the SVR. SVR's compromised SolarWinds software supply chain gave it the ability to spy on or potentially disrupt more than 16,000 computer systems worldwide. It ain't just us, people. Scope of this compromise is a national security and public safety concern. Moreover, it places an undue burden on the mostly private sector victims who must bear the unusually high cost of mitigating this incident. Friggin' commies, man. Let's see. Supporting global cybersecurity approach means we're partnering with other countries, including the ones aforementioned. Continues to strongly affirm the importance of an open, interoperable, secure, and reliable internet. Russia's actions run counter to that goal, which is shared by many of our allies and partners. To strengthen our collective approach, first, U.S. is bolstering its efforts to promote a framework of responsible state behavior in cyber space and to cooperate with allies and partners to counter malign cyber activities. This means we're going to spank them. That means we're going to have our own hacker corps break into Apartment 29 facilities that we're aware of and like blow the transformer on the building and have, human wet works people in the state destroying the electronic infrastructure of these places. We are also bolstering our efforts through the Marshall Center to provide training to foreign ministry lawyers and policymakers on the applicability of international law to state behavior in cyberspace and non-binding peacetime norms that were negotiated in the UN and endorsed by the UN General Assembly. Secondly, we're reinforcing our commitment to collective security in cyberspace. So we're working with everybody and our allies, including UK, France, Denmark, Estonia, into the planning for, this is a new one, and get ready to hear this in the right wing, Cyber Flag 21-1 will be the new Jade Helm, probably, which is an exercise designed to improve our defense capabilities and resiliency in cyber space. Cyber Flag 21-1 will build a community of defensive cyber operators and improve overall capability of the United States and allies to identify, synchronize, and respond in unison against simulated malicious cyberspace activities targeting our critical infrastructure and key resources. So they're going to run, basically, this is the institution of cyber war games between our allies and other groups so that when this shit happens, they'll be prepared. And they're going to run cyber games on this so that, people get used to the idea. So all these phishing expeditions where you find out that, somebody got, their email password phished and it allowed them to get into a state computer or private computer. They're going to run games on these things like security tests. And they're going to go to the companies or the states or the state legislatures and go, hey, guys, we ran this thing on it. We were able to break in your system 3 out of 4 times, and we're going to do all this stuff. If we were able to do it, they're definitely trying to do it. So here's how to fix your shit. We're going to show you how to do this at taxpayers' expense, by the way. We're paying for this, as we should, to protect our businesses here at home and state governments, even if they don't care to bother dealing with this. Now, all the stories you hear about ES&S machines in Texas sending the votes to Spain and back, and if you watch the Mike Lindell stuff I've covered, a lot of that, even though there's stuff in HR 1 for protecting the cyber integrity of our voting systems, are a huge part of this. This EO itself, using all policies and capabilities, all of that stuff is going to make it possible for us to protect our elections from digital interference from other countries. So that if they try and hack into, the Wisconsin Secretary of State's office or the election board of Pennsylvania and mess with stuff, we will have a system in place between now and 2022 that will stop that, much to the chagrin of Republicans. Now, the thing they can't do is nothing about this. Yeah, human wet works, right. I just mean wet works not in terms of they're going to spill blood to do it, but that human beings will be boots on the ground in these circumstances. Old-fashioned spy work is going to be happening. And I don't doubt that some people are going to be removed from the planet who are particularly awful in some of these cases, just because of how much they'll protect it. Because if Putin's willing to bag his own, intelligence community officials on suspicion of them being spies and make them disappear forever, imagine what he would do to an American or French or UK, operative in the country checking out, listening in on on like Apartment 29. So, anyways, this stuff is going, the stuff, the cybersecurity stuff that's in HR 1, which is incredibly important, and the security of our election machines will be part of this defense push, as will all the defense pushes of the other democracies that are aligned with us that have been attacked by Russia, that have, helped, right-wingers in Germany gain ground and all this kind of stuff. So this is something to look forward to, but really just substantial, normal, solid governing. It's very impressive, and we're all lucky to be, in a new administration that actually gives a shit.